Good evening, everyone. Greetings for Eve of May Day. My name's Rachel Garnham. I'm a long-standing Arise supporter, a former member of Labour Party NEC, an international solidarity activist and an activist with the UCU University and Colleges Union. And I'm really pleased to welcome you to this rally tonight to kick off the May Day weekend ahead of us. So we have some brilliant speakers from all around the world on why we need socialism, peace and internationalism in opposition to Trump's New World Disorder. And this exciting event is hosted by Arise, a festival of left ideas. So here in Britain, we need to build both resistance to the policies of austerity, racism and war that are so prevalent, and build support for socialist solutions. And for this struggle to be successful, we have to understand that our struggle is not alone. All around the world, many governments, like our own, are failing to protect people and planet, and many, like our own, are resorting to scapegoating and militarism. Yet there is hope across the globe, as we will hear from our international speakers tonight, who I'm really looking forward to. People are not only resisting the ruling class offensive, but fighting for and building a better future. And in Latin America in particular, where the left is on the advance, they are winning and starting to build and shape that better future. And there are advances elsewhere too, including for anti-imperialist causes in Africa, and on our doorstep, the growing support for Irish unity. There is hope, even in these dark times. The resistance of the Palestinian people continues. We need to link up with all those fighting this ruling class offensive and those under attack and shape left alternatives, make the links between socialists internationally and our international values of unity, hope and solidarity are more important than ever. And we're going to be hearing a lot more about those values and what we can do this evening. Due to an amazing level of interest, as well as this Zoom webinar, we are streaming live direct from the Arise YouTube pages and over a dozen Facebook pages. And as the event moves on, we would encourage you to post comments in the Q&A section on Zoom and let us know where you're tuning in from. And I can already see there's lots of you joining us, which is really encouraging on what is a lovely warm day in the south of England, certainly. So thank you for making the time to join us. And if you can, please do make a donation to the cost of the event, and there's going to be a link posted in the chat about that. So without further ado, you didn't come to hear me, you came to hear our brilliant speakers, each of whom will speak for 7 minutes as part of this celebration of socialism and internationalism today. And our first speaker, I'm delighted to welcome Fran Heathcote, who is the PCS General Secretary. And thanks for making the time to join us, Fran. Over to you.
Thanks so much, Rachel, and thanks everybody for having me along tonight. I don't think we should be in any doubt that these are grave times for the trade union movement, the left and for progressive movements more generally. We know that the election of Donald Trump has emboldened the far right politically around the world and legitimised bigotry on a scale that we haven't seen for many decades. In terms of the United States, earlier this month, I met with my American counterpart in the trade union representing civil servants, or federal employees as they call them. Thousands of members there have been sacked, equality laws and policies have been ripped up, and the government is trying to break the union by ending the method through which the union collect their subs directly from their payroll. Francis Moore did exactly the same to us 10 years ago, and it nearly broke PCS. But just to give you a bit of good news for a minute, we challenged that in the courts, and after a 10-year battle, we found out a couple of months ago that we'd won, and the government now owes us compensation for the financial detriment that caused to our union. But our sister unions are not in that space. We've seen in the US public services slashed, workers laid off, and tax cuts for the super rich and corporations. Trump's Republicans offer no solution at all to working class people in the United States, just scapegoats, which serve as a cover for a right-wing agenda, economic agenda against the interests of working class people. That is Reform's agenda in the UK as well. And we perhaps should have some cautious optimism that Donald Trump is discrediting the far right with the economic disaster that he's unleashed, much as Liz Truss did here, and that tarnish may stick to his close allies like Farage as well. But of course, reform is riding high in the polls at the moment, but they offer absolutely no solutions in this country's country's problems. They will only find you somebody to blame because they're really good at that. Scapegoats, not solutions. We know as trade unionists that our class is strongest when it is united. And that's why we have to reject the politics of dividing one community against another, because it does weaken us all. There is nothing that cynical employers and politicians want more than a divided and weakened working class. We've seen this over many decades. In the 80s and the 90s, the Tories demonised unemployed people, trade unionists, migrants, and single mothers. Every time people start turning on their neighbours, it lets those in power off the hook. The threat we face is not only from reform, though. Too often, Conservative politicians, and sometimes Labour ones as well, peddle exactly the same division and hate, and it is in our interests as trade unionists to resist all of that. It's not migrants that are putting up energy bills. It's not Muslims who are hiking water bills. It's not disabled people. Excuse me. It's not disabled people jacking up our rent. The people ripping us off are the super rich tax dodgers, the corporations, the landlords, and the low paying bosses. There is nothing that reform wants less than a united working class movement that's demanding better pay, better investment in public services, council housing, and decent social security. And that's why they work so hard to divide us into blaming migrants or dragging us into culture war arguments that are just a massive distraction. And reform is a threat to the public services our members deliver, on which working class people depend. This is a far-right corporate-funded party committed to cutting and privatising public services, and we need people to recognise that. Nigel Farage has said that he wants the National Health Service replaced with a private insurance-based model. In their manifesto in the last election, Reform proposed massive cuts across public services and social security, with huge tax cuts for the richest and for corporations. Reform and Farage might pose outside steelworks, but they are absolutely no friend of working class people. Reform MPs voted against the Employment Rights Bill. They didn't want any restrictions on zero-hour contracts or fire and rehire, no strengthening of sick pay or even bereavement leave. They want weak, compliant workers and weak, ineffective trade unions. But we're also seeing the international consequences of Trumpism and its malign influence. The ripping up of the USAID was mirrored by Labour here, slashing international aid. We have seen the green light given to Israel to commit even greater war crimes against the Palestinian people, and full express support for the ethnic cleansing of both Gaza and the West Bank. I'm here in Dundee today, sunny Dundee unusually, and just finished the STUC, and I'm really pleased to report that we had a very heated and passionate debate about Palestine, where I moved the lead motion. And despite some opposition, that position of supporting Palestine and ending arms sales to Israel was carried in every motion at the STUC, which is really, really good news, and looked fairly unlikely about 2 hours before when the composite fell apart. But I'm really pleased to report that that held, and they now have a very progressive policy in terms of all of that. We've seen the Ukrainian people abandoned as Trump tries to do deals with Putin while trying to pillage Ukraine's mineral wealth as well. And then there is the threat of a trade deal in which the US has an interest in diluting our environmental, food safety and labour regulations, in gaining access to our National Health Service and hiking pharmaceutical prices. We must be ready to resist a Trump trade deal that would be bad for consumers, bad for workers, bad for the environment, and bad for our public services. So we must build our own alliances in order to resist austerity, build unity, and express our international solidarity. Thank you so much for having me along tonight, and I send you solidarity greetings for the rest of your meeting. I'm sorry I can't stay for the whole thing, but thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak to you tonight. Thank you.
Thanks ever so much, Fran, and thanks for joining us directly from the STUC, and it's great to hear that sort of positive, the positive outcomes of the motions there, and There's work now to do, isn't there, to make sure those motions become actions, which I'm sure the comrades in Scotland will be taking up immediately. So our next, I'm going to go over to Ben Hayes from the Arise team to talk a little bit about Arise. Over to you, Ben.
Yeah, thanks, Rachel. It's great to see so many people joining us this evening. Just a brief message on behalf of the volunteer team. We're yet to find any big money sponsors for these streams. So in the meantime, if you're interested in helping to fund our programme of events and keep the spirit of May Day going all year round, there's a link being posted now in the chat where you can become a friend of Arise for £5 a month. So if you're able to and would like to do that, all support is very much appreciated. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Ben. And I'll second that request. And now hand over to Matthew Willgress, who is from the Arise Festival, to talk to us. Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, Rachel. Thanks, Fran, and thanks to our stellar lineup of international guests. Pleased to be invited to speak at this meeting today, and even wearing my Arise-themed mug for the occasion. This is the May Day annual rally we've done every year with international guests since 2020 during the lockdown, when Jeremy Corbyn initiated these rallies, and it's great to have Jeremy and so many international guests with us again today. As we meet, we are in the midst of global economic, social, political, military and climate crisis that are on a scale unprecedented in many of our lifetimes. And into this scenario, as today's event title says, has entered the returning Trump, launching a new phase in the ongoing war of US imperialism against the majority of humanity. This is reflected internally in the US in a deeply reactionary agenda spearheaded by billionaires, polluters and haters. Internationally, it's seen economic warfare against and mass deportations with devastating consequences to many countries in neighbouring Latin America, including Honduras and Mexico, which we'll hear about more later. Then there is the massive increases in attacks on the not-so-Cold War on China, alongside an ongoing commitment to a nuclear arms race which threatens our very future. Enabling a massive increase in fossil fuel extraction in the US itself, alongside withdrawal from the Paris Agreement, shows they will literally wage war on our planet. These, though, are not the actions of the world's mightiest power in its prime. They are those of a desperate empire seeking unsuccessfully to reverse its decline and hold off the emerging new global economic reality and the emerging global south. These developments are reflected deeply here in Britain, where none of the ruling class's neoliberal so-called solutions from the 1970s to today have been able to reverse decline. Unwilling to tax the rich and desperate to appease the markets, Rachel Reeves is the latest chancellor to search for massive cuts. Internationally, meanwhile, Britain clings desperately to the coattail of Trump and the US, as shown by the current Foreign Secretary's unedifying fawning over Trump, having previously called him a tyrant and, I quote, a woman-hating, neo-Nazi, sympathising sociopath. The overall desperate economic situation here in the US and elsewhere also directly links to the drive towards permanent war. This has been starkly illustrated by the genocide on Gaza, made possible by the sales of weapons from the US and Britain, which shamefully nearly a year into this so-called Labour government continue. Yet Israel's assault has been responded to globally and here in Britain by militant, mass and sustained movements for Palestine. The base of these movements have made a link between the twin drives for war and profits, with slogans around ending arms sales and for welfare, not warfare. In this sense, anger at Israel's war has acted as a lightning rod for anger at the whole rotten capitalist system. The agenda of both the returning Trump and the British government, now 10 months in, then illustrate connections between the wars we see on our TV screens, the repressive actions of the state we see on our streets, and the mega profits we read about in our papers, alongside gloomy economic forecasts for the rest of us. And that is why our campaign in solidarity with movements for peace and justice internationally must also now be paired with a vigorous campaign around the call for welfare, not warfare. Keir Starmer's announcement of, and I quote, the biggest sustained increase in defence spending since the end of the Cold War, at Trump's behest, has been opposed by groups such as Disabled People Against the Cuts. For those who don't know the detail, the pledge is to increase military expenditure by $6 billion a year for the next 4 years, and then after that by a further $15 billion per year. This magic money tree is clearly still in operation when it comes to weapons of destruction. Not only will these increases fuel an arms race and add to the likelihood of Britain's involvement in future wars, as we see as they again shamefully bomb Yemen today. But the reality is that so-called defence spending generates less jobs than spending in any other economic sector. Not only should we add our voice to those campaigns calling for a peace dividend now by demanding 3 billion of additional nuclear military spending announced for the next year is restored to the funding of our essential social needs, but we should also back the parliamentary motion from Diane Abbott, Jeremy Corbyn, Richard Burgon and others demanding benefits are not cut at the expense of ever-increasing military spending. In this way, we also link our two key struggles today, against capitalism and against war. On International Workers' Day, then, our fight is for peace and socialism, and our call remains the same. Workers of the world unite. You have nothing to lose but your chains. Thank you, Rachel.
Thanks, Matt, for that inspiring address, and for all your work in contributing to our May Day celebrations. And it's delightful to see comrades joining us from Paisley, Winchester, Aberdeenshire, Mexico City, Cheshire, Newcastle and Aberystwyth, and thanks to all of you for joining. Our next speaker is Marga Ferré, who is from Transform Europe and Foundation for Critical Studies in Spain. And thank you for joining us, Marga. Over to you.
Thanks to you for inviting me, Rachel. First of all, sorry for my English and my accent. I'm a Spaniard. I'm speaking from Madrid. I'm the president of Transform Europe, which is a think tank of the left in Europe, of course, inside and outside the European Union. I would like to follow what Matt said before. The last week, I read in the Financial Times one analyst saying the following. He said, Europe must slash its welfare state to build a warfare state. And he did it clearly in the Financial Times. So the objective of the capitalists today is clear, crystal clear. That is what they want. It's not a question only of war, it's a question of to stop and to demolish our welfare state. So I found an answer to him by an argument made by an Italian intellectual who is a member of the GGL. GGL is a trade union in Italy. And her analysis of this rearmament in Europe, she concluded that the idea of rearming Europe to meet Trump's objectives is as sensible as producing more wine and beer to reduce alcoholism, because it's literally the same. I mean, it bears to repeat it and repeat it again. European countries import 2/3 of the US military equipment. So this increase in military spending is a huge subsidy to the US military industrial complex. And who are these military complex who are receiving all this money of the European citizens, because it's public money to buy weapons, what they are proposing at European level and in UK, of course, too. So analyzing who are the owners of these military companies, it's easy to see, because it's a very concentrating capital in few hands, like in other sectors, that all these big military companies in the US are owned by fund investments. So the best friends of Donald Trump fund investment, the biggest and richest people in the world, are benefiting for the money of the European working class in buying them the weapons. And it's important to repeat it to our people. This call to buy weapons, to rearm Europe, is an excuse to subsidize the military industry in the US in a ridiculous and absurd, irrational way of understanding our role in the world. In my perspective, the warmongering hysteria that the governments and the media are creating in Europe needs to create such a state of panic in face of an imminent threat that we are willing to trade our wages and rights for weapons and missiles. It's as simple as that. What they are asking for us is to take, money from our wages and for our rights under the umbrella of the welfare state in order to buy weapons to the military industry in the US. It's like fear is becoming an economic engine. And the worst of all is that they are passing it off as a good idea. And clearly it is not. In my opinion, it has never been so important for the labor movement both the parties and the trade unions to propose a different way forward, completely different one. Countries in the European Union and also in the UK are coming from years of recession and of minimal growth, and it is not going to change it soon. So real wages in Europe are significantly lower than before the COVID pandemic. So we must be aware that when they say that we need to spend more weapons in wars and our money in buying weapons, that means that those has to be financed by debt and taxes. So after decades, we have watching how the tax cuts for the rich are impossible to put on both sides of the Atlantic, by the way. So higher taxes will mean lower take-home pay, lower salaries for the working class. More weapons means less rights and wages for the working class and for the ordinary people. So that's the reason, because I really think that the workers' parties and trade unions, we should strive to make a complete break with this path. And we are doing so, by the way. There are hundreds of initiatives defending peace all around the world. And it is springing up all around the world, really. And they are rescuing, the peace movement, the working class, progressive government, another way of understanding security. And I would like to talk briefly about these ideas, that it is possible to talk about security for human beings and for our peoples in a different way. So maybe it's time to come back again to the concept of common security launched by Olof Palme years ago, which is the powerful idea that the nations and their peoples can only feel secure when their counterparts are also feel secure. I remember that a pacifist friend of mine from Italy reminded me that this very same idea was evident during the pandemic. We feel safe when others feel safe too. So years ago, the United Nations also launched the idea of human security, which is not focused in weapons and state, but human security, meaning that every individual, every people need security in economic, in food, in political, and in health, and in housing too. So let's come back again to what security means in order to confront this horrible idea that we are watching from our governments all around Europe. The idea that we are under a threat, we must have fear of Russia, and that's the reason because we need to put our rights aside and to buy weapons to the US military complex, because it's as simple as that, as terrible as that. But there is good news, of course, among all these war discourses. No? In my country, in Spain, I must say, maybe you know it, but the radical left is inside the government. In Spain, it's an exception. In Europe, we are going to approve the reduction of the working time at 37.5 hours per week with no reduction of pay. And I think we are doing this in the last 2 weeks. So there's good news coming, the same like the Spanish government, because the radical left is inside, and with the pressure of the trade union, we have just canceled. We are going to try to cancel, and we cancel yet all the military trades with Israel and the state of Spain. So, comrades and friends, I honestly think that this is the time to fight for peace, for our security, for our salaries, for the welfare state that we as working class have been fighting for all these years, and for developing our rights, our ideas, and the path to socialism. Peace is needed. Peace is the first step, and to protect it is our duty. So we must defend the idea that I took it for the president of Mexico, Claudia Sheinbaum, that she said the other day during the G20 meeting. She said, and I quote, and I finish with this: "It is absurd, it is nonsense that there is more spending on arms than on poverty or climate change." So, comrades, they fight for peace because our future depends on it. Thank you very much for inviting me to this rally.
Thank you so much, Marga, for another inspiring contribution, and for reinforcing that message of welfare, not warfare, which we're all fighting for, aren't we? And thank you for bringing solidarity from Spain, and we send our solidarity greetings back to those of you in Spain fighting for peace and socialism. Delighted to welcome our next speaker from Palestine. Obviously, that is one of the most important struggles that we are all working in solidarity with at the moment, and we send all our solidarity to the terrible situation there. I'm delighted to welcome Eman Al-Shayeb from the General Secretariat, the General Union of Palestinian Teachers, and we're so pleased that you're able to join us this evening, Eman, and welcome and solidarity, and over to you.
Yes, thank you. Hello, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to speak about the current situation of our student and our teacher. This is what Luis told me to talk about. From the session, I noticed that you talk about the policy of Trump. And of course, everything happening in Palestine is in support of America and Trump, you know that. So I'm going to talk about the current situation of education system in Palestine. Is that okay?
Please go ahead. Yes.
Okay. My name is Iman Al-Shayeb. I am a member of the General Secretariat of the General Union of the Palestinian Teachers, and I'm speaking on behalf of the trade union. First of all, I want to thank you all for your continuous solidarity with our people who have been severely affected by the Israeli attacks in Gaza Strip and West Bank. I want also to thank you all for giving us the chance in this event to talk about the current situation for our schools and our teachers in Gaza Strip and West Bank. The education system in Palestine, as you know, faces great and complex challenges, mainly resulting from the difficult political, social, and economic conditions, which mainly resulting from the ongoing Israeli government's dangerous and racist violations against our people, which increased after the 7th of October 2023. These challenges affect the quality of education in Palestine. The most dangerous challenge that faces our education system in Palestine is violence practiced by the Israeli occupation, which is creating an unsafe environment for learning. The educational system in Gaza Strip has completely stopped since the start of the aggression, the 7th of October 2023. Gaza Strip was no longer a safe place for our students and our teachers. The Israeli government destroyed the educational infrastructure of schools and universities. So more than 700,000 students continue to be deprived of access to their schools for 2 academic years because of the severe damage of the educational system since the aggression. More than 13,677 students were martyred. More than 21,897 students were injured in Gaza Strip alone, not to mention the disabilities among them. In addition to more than 663 from the educational staff were martyred and 2,825 from the educational staff who were injured. According to schools, 443 public schools have been completely or partially destroyed. 89 UNRWA schools also have been attacked and damaged. The Israeli government committed a systematic genocide by destroying the Palestinian educational system in Gaza and depriving generation from education, which is considered a main human right, as you know. This leads to many deep and negative effects on their psychological health, and our children's, of course, psychological health and their mental and educational abilities, and on their social life. Because for 2 years, our children in Gaza don't have any access to their schools in Gaza Strip. Thus, most of our children suffer from deep trauma and psychological disorders due to aggression. The situation in the West Bank also is not better. Schools in West Bank are also exposed to Israeli soldiers and settlers' violence. The detention of and killing of our students and teachers and administrative staff, in addition to the harassment on the checkpoints and gates practiced by the Israeli soldiers while our students and our teachers are on their way to schools, especially schools which are located in Area C. Area C in Palestine are fully controlled by the Israeli government and East Jerusalem, as well as remote areas where children face difficulty reaching their schools. Statistics show that 100 students in West Bank were martyred and 641 were injured. And we have 353 who are arrested in the Israeli prisons. And we have 4 persons from the educational staff who were martyred, and 21 were injured, and more than 176 who were arrested in the West Bank. The educational sector in Jerusalem also is primary target for the Zionist government, and it works hard to control it in Jerusalem. So we have 3 main districts in Palestine. We have West Bank, we have Gaza Strip, and we have Jerusalem. So I describe the situation in Gaza Strip, the educational situation in West Bank, and educational situation in Jerusalem. The educational situation in Jerusalem is very dangerous because the Israeli government want to control the whole system and want to change all the curricula, the Palestinian curricula, into Jewish curricula in Jerusalem. So the occupation authorities reprinted the Palestinian curricula books and deleted everything related to Palestine. They Judaized its curricula to suit the Zionist plans in order to change the thinking of our generation and distance them from the issue, which is the Palestinian issue. UN schools also in Jerusalem facing the threat of a closure by the 5th of May 2025. This is an attack on refugee rights and an attempt to liquidate the agency's presence in the Holy Land, Jerusalem. This decision targets 110,000 refugees who rely on the agency's services in Jerusalem. As you know, we have many refugees in Jerusalem, in West Bank and Gaza Strip, and the Israeli government nowadays are attacking UNRWA schools and UNRWA services in everywhere. It violates the international law, the UN resolution. Another challenge that the education system faces in Palestine is the irregularity of the educational system in Palestine, in West Bank and in Jerusalem, because the Palestinian National Authority cannot afford full salaries for its employees, which affect the quality of education in Palestine. This happens because Israel is withholding Palestinian taxes revenues, the clearing fund, illegally and in violation of the signed agreement, especially the Paris Economic Protocol. Clearing taxes revenues, Israel collect them on goods received on the Palestinian territories through the ports it fully controls. So they took the taxes and they sometimes delay them, sometimes they discount from them for many excuses, and because of that, our national authority cannot afford the salaries for its employees, and this affects the regularity of the educational system in Palestine, because many of our teachers at the end of the month don't have any money in order to reach their schools. We, for the 4th year, we are taking 70% of our salaries only because of that. The international community owe it to the children of Palestine to support their rights of education. They must send a message that those who target schools and universities will be responsibility, because attacks on education cannot be tolerated. The international community and I think the unions, the international unions, all those, because you are coming from unions, you can do a lot. You can press on your government, so you can communicate with the international organization and decision makers in the world in order to provide a safe and educational environment for our children, to rebuild the educational system, to provide support to our students and our teachers, finding just and lasting solution to our Palestinian issue. And thank you for listening to us. I want to add to my speech that, you know, all these practices that the Israeli government practice toward us in order to force us to displace our land. And Trump support them, and all the weapons that Israel use against us come from America. So, this is Trump policy and Netanyahu policy. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Iman, so much for joining us and sharing your experiences. It really is absolutely heartbreaking to hear the situation for children in Palestine and in particular in Gaza. And
thank you,
as you say.
Thank you for giving me the chance to talk in your event.
Well, you are very welcome, and I think we must all sort of redouble our efforts, as you say, on our governments to not stand idly by while international law is
yes, we need that. We
broken.
need your support a lot.
Well, 100%, and yeah.
And thank you for your solidarity with us. We know that you do a lot with us, so thank you. And thank you for Arise. This organization, it's my first time to hear from about this organization. So I saw some links. I'm going to read about them and try to communicate with you.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much, and solidarity to you and all your comrades and teachers and children in Gaza. I'm afraid we have to move on now, but thanks again for joining us. And I'm going to move on to our next speaker, who is Richard Burgon, MP, who is hot-footing it from some votes in Parliament. I hope he is here. There he is. Over to you, Richard. Welcome.
I am here. Thank you, Rachel. And apologies that I can't stay for long after I've spoken. Unfortunately, I've got to disappear to get a train back up home to Leeds. But I'm delighted to join you today. It's a real privilege to hear from our Palestinian colleague just now. International Workers' Day, I think, is our moment to reaffirm a simple but powerful truth. And that's the truth that workers everywhere have more in common with each other than they do with their own ruling classes. And this message is more vital than ever as Trump and his far-right allies fuel a global reactionary wave, scapegoating minorities, stoking racism, promoting bigotry, from attacks on trans rights to restrictions on a woman's right to choose. It's the same old divide and rule rhetoric, the same old divide and rule tactic, designed to get workers to turn on each other, to distract from the real causes of people's suffering, and to protect the privileges of the elites. That image of Trump at his inauguration, surrounded by the world's wealthiest men, showed what's really going on. Billionaires cloaking themselves in the language of the people while robbing the people blind. But our movement has always had an answer to scapegoating and division, and that answer is unity and solidarity. As a great Cuban poet, Jose Marti, said, humanity is our homeland. So let's be guided by those inspiring words. Let's treat everyone with compassion and respect, and let's work to build a world where everyone has real opportunities. Now, no International Workers' Day can pass at this time without expressing our unwavering solidarity with the Palestinian people. We are witnessing a genocide, live streamed in real time, tens of thousands of people murdered with impunity, children starved, hospitals bombed, war crime after war crime, and yet it hardly makes the front pages, although I was pleased to see it making the front page of the Daily Mirror today, and all credit to them for that powerful front page. Does anything expose the inhumanity of our system more than the indifference of so many governments? Some Western governments are not merely standing by, but are arming Israel, including with the world's most powerful fighter jets. And the hypocrisy is glaring. Sanctions are rightly imposed on Russia for its illegal invasion, yet refused when it comes to Israel. We must change that. I was proud to attend the launch of the Hague Group, a new coalition of governments pushing for coordinated sanctions on Israel. We must build a global movement for justice in Palestine, including sanctions on Israel until freedom is secured, just as was done with apartheid South Africa. Palestine lays bare the deep injustice of the current world order. It also underscores how the world is growing ever more dangerous as international law is cast aside. The doomsday clock is inching closer to midnight, not only because of the climate catastrophe, but also due to the growing risk of world war and nuclear conflict. Trump's so-called trade war with China will pour more fuel on the fire. It's already damaging the global economy. It's already driving up costs for working people. But for Trump, that's a price worth paying, as long as it's ordinary people who pay that price, while he tries to reorganize much of the world behind the USA to confront China. But economic wars can easily escalate into real wars. We need to be clear. A war between the US and China would be an all-out nuclear war, and the consequences of which are simply too horrific to even imagine. Across Europe, governments demand ever greater military budgets, even as public services are slashed and disability support axed. That's clearly the wrong priority. As Tony Benn said, if we can find the money to kill people, we can find the money to help people. And that, I would argue, should be the slogan of this time, the slogan of our time. So this May Day, let's raise our voices for peace and cooperation and say no to militarization and yes to social investment. We need governments to be focused on investing in all the challenges workers face, from climate catastrophe, falling wages, crumbling public services, and spiralling inequality. But opposing the far right isn't enough. Their answers are bogus, and we must counter them with bold solutions of our own. We must paint a vision of the world we want to see, a world based on our values of socialism, peace, and justice. And at the core of that must be tackling the economic inequality that blights the lives of billions of people the world over. The super rich are clearly out of control, because according to Oxfam, the world's 5 richest men have doubled their wealth since 2020, while nearly 5 billion people have been pushed backwards. In Britain alone, billionaires' wealth increased by £35 million every single day in 2024. As I say, it's clear the super rich are out of control. This is not a cost of living crisis, it's a cost of greed crisis. But without real action, wealth will become even more concentrated in the hands of a small elite. They'll buy up more homes in our communities. They'll take over more social care homes. They'll get their hands on more of our public services, leaving ordinary people struggling to afford the basics. So our movement must demand that the super rich pay their fair share. That's how we rebuild public services, tackle poverty, and create a more equal society, the kind of change that people are crying out for. I've been campaigning for wealth taxes in Britain. Let's commit this May Day to turning that into a global movement to tackle the great injustices workers all over the world face. And let's apply the same principle to climate action. When they say there's no money to save the planet, we must point out the truth. The very same oil companies that brought us to the brink of climate disaster have been raking in billions in super profits. Let's make the polluters pay for the climate action we need globally and in every country. Our world is increasingly marked by division, war, scapegoating, and poverty. Our job is to keep the flame of socialism, peace, and justice alive, and to fight for the rights of working people everywhere. May Day is our moment to recommit to building a world where humanity becomes before profit, where solidarity crosses every border, and where hope triumphs over hate. That better world is not only possible, it's necessary. And together, if we fight for it, we can win it. Solidarity. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Richard, and thanks for everything you're doing to keep the flame, that very difficult flame, alive in Parliament, and to build support for an alternative economic strategy to tackle, as you say, the cost of greed crisis. And thanks for fitting us in between votes and trains and everything that you're doing. So solidarity, and happy May Day to you. And we'll move on to our next speaker, who is Maria Perez Ramos from the Mexico Solidarity Forum. And thanks to Maria for joining us as well. Welcome. Over to you.
Hello, thank you to the Arise team for inviting me, and thank you for to everyone who remains here, who is decided to listen to what I have to say. It is a difficult topic, actually, the disorganized way Trump does things at the moment. But I would like to start just remembering that Trump, without lying, told people, and we all knew that he would do everything to get richer himself and help his super rich friends to amass more money, as they are doing now, cynically on TV, as you saw recently with the devaluation of the different shares and the stock market, etc. And now I will be jumping into Mexican issues. I don't know what to say about Trump because ever since he announced that he was going to become a candidate, he started to spit his threats against Mexico. He started with his threats of like deportations, and also but classifying the cartels as terrorist organizations. We all know what that means. So he was already trying to invade Mexico and to, catch some drug lords and get the head of one of them or several of them. That continues to be one of his goals. Now that the Mexican government has sent some drug lords to the US, they are trying to give him the death penalty, which is very interesting. But another thing that we have seen all this time linked to this problem is that his super rich friend, Elon Musk, has been very vocal about security in Mexico, which is very interesting because they do nothing to stop the consumption of drugs on their territory or to stop the flow of weapons south to our country. But they were trying to make it look like Mexico needs to be invaded again. And we've seen several times some ships and planes that are spying, and they are passing by the edge of the international waters and air just to be detected by the army. We still don't know what they are actually doing there, but it's actually scary, as you can see, or you would feel if it were here. Now, regarding the tariffs, it has been very interesting because Mexico has been able to evade most of them due to the free trade agreements that we have with the US and Canada, because that would breach the said agreement in these cases. And also because their own business people have been complaining about these tariffs because it is obviously not beneficial for them, as it is not beneficial for the consumers either. But this has brought interesting movements like the boycott of the US tourism from Mexico and from Canada. And also from the government, it brought the Plan Mexico, which is basically a continuation of the spending on the welfare state that AMLO started, plus a new vision of starting self-sufficiency when it comes to fuel, gas, and food as well. Another thing that I found very interesting about Trump is that he has been trying to take new infrastructure built by our government, our previous administration, Tren Maya. He threatened with trying to go and investigate whether China was involved in this new service with the train over there in the south. Another interesting thing he's done is changing the name of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America, which is also bringing some conspiracies that I kind of believe, that he's changing the name to have the ability to start drilling the bottom of the ocean right there. And he has announced that he's doing that on their side of the Gulf already, endangering species, and obviously with the risk of pollution. And the latest thing that has shaken the politics in Mexico is that for some reason, Televisa, one of the major corporate TV broadcasters, which joined Univision, which is from the US, started to transmit these threatening adverts to stop migrants from going to the US. These adverts are deeply racist and horrible. If you haven't seen them, probably you will see them on Instagram or any other social media platform. But this also has brought something interesting, which is the new radio and and telecommunications law, which is basically outlining that all concessions for broadcasters that are broadcasting propaganda from foreign governments can be terminated. Now they are trying to fight this, obviously, but it's too late because this law is passing very soon, if it didn't pass already. And just to end, because we don't have much time, I just want to finish with this very interesting quote or phrase said by Julius Malema. I watched today a video where he was calling for solidarity with, what is his name, Touré? And he said, we have to stop Donald Trump because he is a danger to himself and to the rest of the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. And yes, isn't he? He really is. And how difficult it must be in Mexico to be right on Trump's doorstep. And thank you for sort of bringing to our attention what's going on there, and solidarity to you. Next, I'm just going to read a message from Chris Hazzard, MP, who unfortunately isn't able to join us after all. He says, I'm sorry I can't join you this evening due to a pressing constituency engagement. May I take this opportunity to extend our solidarity to everyone on the call. As our great patriot James Connolly once observed, every man or woman who takes up a stand for liberty is our comrade, and their cause should be our cause. I thank you all for your ongoing support for the Irish cause of national self-determination and the reunification of our country. I wish you all a happy May Day. United we stand, for unity is our strength. So I couldn't, very happy to quote James Connolly at this point of the evening, and found myself quoting him at work yesterday as well. It's always room for a James Connolly quote. Our next speaker is Walter Baier, who is from the Party of the European Left in Austria. And thank you for joining us, Walter.
Hi, fraternal May Day greetings from Red Vienna. We live in dangerous times, perhaps the most dangerous since the world was liberated from fascism 80 years ago. Trump and the global rise of the extreme nationalist right represent indeed the attempt by the most reactionary forces of the ruling class to resolve today's crisis through authoritarianism and external aggression. The climate crisis, inequality, and the profoundly unjust world economic order, none of these are being addressed. Instead, we see militarization, walls, and war. 70 years after the defeat of fascism, Leaders like Trump, Putin, Netanyahu, Erdogan show us that the far right is not a relic of the past, it's a threat of the present. Their rise goes hand in hand with the huge armament programs, with Europe being the fastest militarizing continent, as we have learned from the recent CIPRI study. And both are symptom of a deeper issue, the global crisis of capitalism and global imperialist rivalries. These rivalries have pushed us to the edge of catastrophe. But let me be clear, this is also a time of resistance and struggle. For the European left, the fight for social justice and ecological transformation cannot be separated from the struggle for peace. These are one fight, and it's a global struggle. Let's speak about the hypocrisy in Western politics. While the EU has imposed sanctions on Russia, it continues to support the far-right government of Israel with weapons, funding, and moral and political support as it wages a genocidal war in Gaza. We demand an arms embargo and economic sanctions on Israel. Yes, we condemned the Russian aggression against the Ukraine from the beginning. But it's time to speak truth. The US and EU strategy was never truly about protecting and saving Ukraine. It was rather about defeating and weakening Russia. And this strategy has collapsed. This strategy has us pushed closer to a direct confrontation between nuclear powers. This is not a strategy for peace. We call for a ceasefire under UN supervision, a just peace, and the return to international law. Ironically, even Trump's presidency has one effect. It forced EU leaders to talk about strategic autonomy of Europe. But what do they mean by that? For Macron, von der Leyen, and others, autonomy just means more weapons, more military buildup. We say no. We say autonomy means peace. It means self-determined policy. It means cooperation and not bombs. We demand Europe and a world free of nuclear weapons by 2050. And we call for the withdrawal of US nuclear weapons from Europe, starting with Germany. No new US missiles, no more nuclear dependency. We also demand that the clause in the EU treaties binding Europe to NATO and thus to US military dominance be removed. Because real security is not about missiles or fighter jets. Real human security is about protecting people from pandemics, from hunger, from climate change. It means water, housing, healthcare, and dignity for the working people. Yes, while the European Commission wants to slash public services to cut deficits, they allow unlimited military spending. Austerity for the people, super profits for the arms industry. We say no more. We support the European Trade Union Confederation in their fight against austerity. Without defeating militarism, there will be no social justice, no climate justice, no future. But there is hope. The peace movement is alive again in Rome, in Berlin, in Greek and Italian ports. In Spain, workers are stopping arms shipments to Israel. Civil society, churches, unions are rising. And it works. In Spain, pressure from the left forced the government to cancel weapon deliveries to Israel. We are part of this growing movement. We support the anti-NATO demo in The Hague in June and the Stop Rearm initiative hosted by a broad alliance. So let us not be led by fear, but by hope. Let us not build walls of weapons, but bridges between people and the working classes. Let us not prepare for war, but build a future of peace. Victory is possible, and another world is possible. Thank you for inviting me to your event.
Thank you so much, Walter, and thank you for highlighting what real security means and those successful campaigns against arms to Israel, and solidarity to you and all those fighting for socialism in your party. Before we move on to our final speaker, I just want to thank everyone who's been involved in tonight's rally. Thank you to everyone who's joined us online. There's been over 500 of you at some points of the evening from all corners of England, Scotland, Wales, Ireland, and also from Mexico and from Washington DC. And we're grateful for your support. We're very grateful to our speakers, and please do contribute to the cost of the event if you can, so that we can put more of these events on. And it's been so inspiring to hear from everyone who's fighting for peace and socialism across the globe, and we want to do it again next year. And people have highlighted there is hope, and I hope we will be in a better position next year, but we will need to fight for it. We have important battles ahead, and we know how important our campaigning for people and the planet is, and we need to popularise some of these socialist alternatives, and internationalism and the values of May Day are a vital part of this. Our final speaker is Jeremy Corbyn MP. Jeremy has been caught up with votes and various other peace meetings that he needs to get to, but he has sent us a video from earlier, so hopefully one of our colleagues from Arise will play the video. Here we go.
Welcome to the online rally this evening. I'm really sorry I'm not physically online with you, and this has to be a recording because we've got a big local public meeting which I have to be at. Tomorrow is May Day, and traditionally that is a day of hope. It's a day of hope for working class communities around the world. It's a day of hope and a day of solidarity. But this year, there's a lot to be concerned about. One, the continued impoverishment, starvation and killing of the Palestinian people in Gaza by a deliberate and specific act by the Israeli Defense Force. And in the meantime, Britain is still supplying weapons to Israel. It's got to stop. Aid has got to get through. The occupation must end. That's what the International Court and others have said. And so we have another Palestine Solidarity March coming up in a couple of weeks. Make sure you're there on that one and supporting the Palestinian people. I met somebody this morning who'd come to visit this country from Ramallah, and he said, don't underestimate how important it is to have your marches, because they give us hope and they give us a sense of solidarity. Likewise, we've got to get a ceasefire in Ukraine. We cannot go on observing vast numbers of Ukrainian soldiers dying and Russian soldiers dying at the same time. Their deaths are not going to bring about peace. Only a ceasefire will start to bring about a peace process. And today I raised in Parliament the question of Britain's involvement in the civil war in Yemen. I don't believe it's going to bring peace. I don't believe it's going to bring a solution. There has to be a comprehensive peace agreement. That means a relationship with Iran. It means a relationship with all the countries in the region. Let's build a world of peace, not of war. And instead, this government is just proposing to raise defence expenditure to 3% of GDP, another 13 billion a year. And at the same time, cutting benefits for those on personal independence payments, refusing to end the two-child benefit cap, which is a disgrace in itself, refusing to compensate the WASPI women. I could go on. But it's what we do now. It's how we come together. I'm in Parliament as an independent MP, together with a group of colleagues who were also elected on the same day as me last year. We are taking up the causes of social justice and the causes of environmental sustainability and the causes of peace. There are thousands of people all over the country doing exactly the same thing. Let's all come together to oppose what this government is doing in perpetuating social injustice and inequality in our society. Another thought for people around the world who need trade union solidarity, those working in the gig economy that have got no rights and representation, those that are under regimes that hate trade unions. That is what solidarity is about. Tonight, celebrate our solidarity, and tomorrow go out and achieve it.